Hello, I'm Brian Eslick from How-to-Automotive, and in today's video I'm going to show you just how easy it is to install struts on your vehicle. So come with me. I went to AutoZone and I picked up a set of these Duralast Loaded Strut Assemblies. Now these strut assemblies are designed to restore ride height, ride quality. They come with the springs and everything you need to install them. One of the great things about these is the easeability of installing. You don't need specialty tools, special spring compressors or anything to swap these out on it. That means that anybody, any DIYer can do this themselves as long as they have a few basic hand tools. So come with me, we're going to get these installed now. So there's a couple reasons why you would even want to do your strut assembly. One, it would be the tires themselves will show wear. So if you look at your tires, if you see a cupping pattern where it's like one tread high, one tread low, one tread high, one tread low, that's the indication that the shock or strut is no longer doing its job and helping keep that wheel planted to the road. Another reason why you want to do it is as they wear, the spring itself will start collapsing over time, and then the ride height will get lower and lower. You may be bottoming out over stuff that you never did before, and now your car is. So that's a sign that your struts are worn out and you need new ones. That's why we're doing the Duralast, because they come with a complete assembly. They restore that ride height. So of course you'll have that spongy feeling as you go down the road it feels like your car is balancing. If you have any of those type of symptoms, it's probably time to replace the struts on your vehicle. They only last between 50 and 60,000 miles. That's what typical manufacturers recommend strut replacements. I just wanted to let you guys know that this video is sponsored by AutoZone. They are helping me out with all the parts and stuff. So thanks to AutoZone. Let's get back to the video. One of the big advantages of doing the loaded strut is you don't have to mess with this dangerous spring. So on these springs here, on a regular strut, you have to compress the spring, take the center nut off, and take the strut apart, put the new strut in, and then put the nut back on and reassemble everything. And that gets a little tricky. There's specialty tools required to do that. And doing it with a loaded strut such as the Duralast strut like here, we don't have to deal with any of that. All we have to do is slip it back in there, bolt it back up, and we're back on the road really quick, really fast. And now we're ready to get started. We're going to jack the vehicle up from the front like this, coming in to the bottom of the control arm. I'll get the camera underneath there and show you. And then we're going to put a jack stand for safety right here on the pinch wheel on the car here. That's where that's the jacking point and the pinch wheel point for the jack stands from the factory. So depending on what you're working on, you can either put the jack on the lower control arm right there, or you can put it on the frame. You got to make sure it's on frame and not on an oil pan or anything like that. And then you can jack the vehicle up. So I'm going to jack this one up right here on the frame. As you can see, until that wheel is off the ground. For jacking up the front of the vehicle, I went ahead and put wheel chocks on the back here so the vehicle doesn't roll. I also got the emergency brake on just for safety. So I got the vehicle jacked up, the tires off the ground. I got it high enough where my jack stand will go under the pinch wheel here. Another quick little safety tip is when you're putting your jack stands, if you're doing it on concrete, you're fine. But if you're on asphalt, the asphalt can get hot in the summertime and they can sink in there, and then the jack stand can become unstable. So you can put some wood or something underneath it, or do it on a concrete pad like this, and you're good. So now I've lowered the jack down so the weight of the vehicle is on the jack stand itself. It's not being supported by the jack. That's the safest way to do this. Now I'm going to take this tire off, and I'm going to put the tire underneath the body of the car for additional safety. When it comes to doing struts, there's a couple different types of struts. This is what they call a wishbone strut. So as you can see, it has like a wishbone that goes over the axle here, and it connects to the lower control arm. On the other ones, it's called what they call a McPherson strut, where this portion here will mount right here to the hub, and it'll have some bolts coming from the side. So you would remove the bolts on that McPherson style. You would remove the bolts coming out this way, so there'll be a bolt and a nut. Also, on this one, you do not have to mess with the brake lines, but on a McPherson one, the brake line will be mounted to the hub or the strut assembly. So you'll have to either take off the brackets like you would see here, or there'll be a clip that you would take off. On the McPherson struts, on these right here are pretty simple. So we have to take this fork off. This part we'll be reusing. So there's going to be a 17 millimeter bolt that goes through all the way through, and we're going to take that bolt out, and then we're also going to take the bolt here which I believe it's on this side, which is a 14 millimeter. So we're going to take that out completely. I recommend that you put a little bit of a penetrating oil on top here to soak it, WD-40, PB Blaster, whatever you like to use, and then soak that for a few minutes, and then that'll make it come apart a lot easier. So I'm going to do just that, give it a little pre-soak, and that'll help everything come right apart real easy. So we're going to get the lower strut mount off right here. So it's a 17 millimeter nut right here. I'm using a 1/2-inch drive ratchet, and I'm also using another 3/8 drive ratchet on the opposite side. You can use a wrench, and they're both 17 millimeters on both sides. Normally I would use an impact, but because I'm doing this DIY style, just the way you guys would be doing this at home, I'm using all hand tools. So you can do this all with hand tools. Very simple job. So you're just going to crack these bolts free, and you're going to take that nut out. You're going to drive it out. So I got the nut free, but we need to slide it through. So what I like to do is put the nut back on and just lightly tap it until it starts driving out through the other side like this. Now you take the nut back off, and if you have a center punch like this tool here, you can put it right on the end and just give it a little tap, and you can drive that bolt all the way out completely. That bolt removed, now you can see that the strut and the lower control arm are floating free, which is a good thing. Now another thing on other types of strut, on the McPherson's type of strut, is see this sway bar link in here? This is connected to the lower control arm. Sometimes they're connected to the strut itself, and you may have to unbolt that. Usually there's just a bolt here, and also the bolt can tend to spin, so you can put vice grips or something behind here. And these are very common wear items, so they also may need to be replaced at the same time you're doing it. They're not that expensive, so if they are worn out or giving you problems, I recommend replacing them. So next we're going to remove the 14 millimeter bolt here, and then we're going to drive the wishbone portion of it down and off. I'm just using a 3/8 ratchet here, and there's no nut on the other side. It's just threaded through. So you're just going to take it, and you need to take this bolt completely out, not just loose, because you can see it's loose now, and it feels like it could come off, but it won't unless you take this all the way out. There's a notch in the back side that won't allow it to come out completely. So you pull that bolt out like that. Also, you see so if you're like me and you live in California, this is probably just going to pop apart pretty simple like that. As you can see, it popped off completely by hand. If you're on the East Coast, you may have to drive that off with a hammer. Soak the heck out of that with some more penetrating oil. They can get frozen on there, but as you can see, it came off pretty easy for me. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put your hand on top of the rotor and push down, or put a pry bar here on the control arm and push down. Then you're going to separate the wishbone from the strut. So if you're on the East Coast and yours needs to be cleaned up, you can use a wire brush and wire brush the inside of it. Makes it going back together a lot easier. Now you can see the strut assembly is pretty much just free and hanging here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come up top here. We need to remove the 3 nuts here. One thing you want to pay attention to is this center nut. You absolutely do not want to remove that center nut. So you absolutely do not want to take that center nut. If you do, that's the center nut here that holds the spring assembly together, and now all that energy will expand out and cause a serious problem. So on this strut right here, it has 5 bolts. Most struts have 3 bolts where you just take the 3 out, but this one here, the strut bracing is part of the strut mount itself, so there's 2 additional bolts there, 12 millimeters. You're going to take these out first, then you'll take the 3 out here. You're not going to take or touch the center bolt here. So not touching the middle center bolt here. We're taking the 2 12 millimeter bolts here, and then the 3 bolts out here. On the last one, I'll show you what you want to do. So take them all out except for one. You're going to loosen it up. Like I said, this is all done with basic hand tools, nothing fancy. You can do this whole job in your driveway in a couple hours and restore your ride quality all by yourself. Now, one of the things you might want to consider is after you're all done, whenever doing any major suspension repairs, is to have it aligned after you're done. So you might want to take it to a shop to have them align it. So I'm going to leave this bolt last. Take off. As you can see, that one was pretty tight. So on the last one here, I like to loosen it up like so, so it's about 3/4 of the way off. Now we're going to reach from under here and grab the strut and lift it upwards and then take the bolt off by hand. And the reason why is I don't want the strut assembly to fall onto the actual shaft and cut the boot or anything like that. So I take the last nut off now. Now I can slowly lower it down, and now I can work it out. I'll move the camera so you can see. You see I can pull the strut assembly out. So it's got pinch between here, so what I'm going to just go back up and just kind of push it over to the side. Like this, and then pull it out. Quick tip for you is to always line your parts up side by side and verify that they are exact match going in. You would hate to get halfway through and realize that you got the wrong part. One of the things you'll notice about the Duralast strut assemblies, it came with all brand new hardware. So we're going to go ahead and take all this off, and then we're going to take the stickers off here, and then we're going to reinstall it on the vehicle. Alright, so now we're going to take our strut assembly and feed it back in there. So on this one it went best like this, and then I'm going to just rotate it up and then straight up, and I'm going to line up the 5 bolts through the strut tower here. Line it up and poke it through. Once I got it started, I'm going to go ahead and start the nuts, all of them. All the hardware also come with these locking splines on here, so there's no need for thread lockers or anything like that. If you like to use that type of stuff, you're welcome to use that. But we're going to put the hardware on without it because it didn't have it on the old stuff. So I got everything started, and I got it about 3/4 of the way run in, but I'm not going to fully tighten it down because I want some movement down here when we assemble the lower wishbone. Okay, before I install the wishbone below, I'm going to put a little bit of thread locker on these bolts here. This helps prevent these bolts from vibrating loose and coming back off. So I'm going to put a little bit on these bolts here. And with that put on, now I'm going to make sure that this is cleaned out. So I'm going to wipe this out really good. If yours needs to be cleaned with a wire brush, I recommend you wire brush this and get it nice and clean. I'm just going to give mine a good wipe down and then put a little bit of penetrating oil on it. And that's going to be pretty good for ours because we live in California and we don't have roughs at our... So now I'm just going to slip this back in over. You want to make sure that it's facing, the curvature is facing towards the ball joint or the brake part like that. So it's going to, if you're on the passenger side like I am, it's going to go like this. If you're on the opposite side, it's going to go away from the car. So now I'm going to slip this in here, and I'll bring you in for a closer look. So I just slipped the wishbone over the axle shaft here, and then slid it over the lower control arm here. So it should slide right down and basically rest on top of the axle here. Now I'm going to use a pry bar. So I'm prying down like this. So as you can see, I got it started. Now wiggling it, it's going to bottom out on the seat here. If you having a little trouble, you can also use a hammer and tap up on the bottom of the wishbone until it bottoms out. Now you're going to put your bolt with the Loctite on it. You're going to start that through. There's a groove, so there's a little notch and groove on the backside. If you don't got it in the right position, the bolt won't slide through. So you'll know you got it right when the bolt slides through and you can start the threads. So if you don't have it in the right position, the bolt won't be able to go through and you won't be able to start the threads. So once you got the threads started, now you can run this in and you can snug this up and tighten it up. So I like to get the bolt started, but still leave it loose because now I still have a little bit of play left and right. Now we can go ahead and start the long bolt. This bolt went through this way on the wishbone. So you gotta kind of line it up, and you gotta push the strut assembly down. You may require a pry bar like this in the control arm. And you can move the suspension up or down to help line up that bolt. Use a pry bar here, stab it through the control arm like this, give this a little pry down, and that'll give me the space to slip the wishbone onto the strut assembly here. And this is what I'm talking about here. So I got the pry bar through here, and I can pry up or down on it, and that helps me line up the bolt here. So by prying up or down, that helps me, and I can drive this bolt through. Once I got it started, then I can use a hammer like this and drive it through until it comes out like this. Now if you're doing the McPherson strut style, where the strut mounts to the spindle, you'll do the same thing, but except for the spindle will rotate side to side or top to bottom, in or out like this way. Now it's time to torque everything down. So every car is going to be different, the torque spec, so you're going to need to look that up in the service manual. On this particular one, the bottom bolt is at 47 foot-pounds, so we'll torque that down. I'm using a wrench here on this side to hold it, and I'll torque it down to 47 foot-pounds. And once we're there, then I'll torque the next bolt. This one was set at 32 foot-pounds. And then we go up here top, and then I'll torque the three bigger bolts here at 37 foot-pounds. It's torqued down. Now we can put the wheel back on and torque this down. Every car is different as far as wheel torque goes, so I recommend you look that up on your vehicle, whatever vehicle you're working on. We're going to lower it down and duplicate the same thing on the opposite side. The first thing you need to do is just jack it up back on the frame, make sure nothing has moved. Now we can slowly lower the jack down. Nice solid. So if you guys are interested in doing struts yourself on your vehicle, I recommend going to AutoZone, picking up some Duralast Loaded Strut Assemblies. I'm Brian Eslick from How to Automotive. I'd like to thank you guys for watching and encourage you to subscribe.